Are you ready to sing first? You want to sing? You want to sing? Eh? What are you going to sing? So the program will start as soon as the minister and the deputy minister arrive to college. Please accept our apologies for slight delays. So in the meantime, introduce yourself to your neighbors. Portfolio Committee. I acknowledge they are already in the house. Okay, may I request that we stand up to welcome the minister and may I request that, Minister, you are welcome. We have already welcomed the Deputy Minister and the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee. Please remain standing for the national anthem.
Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to acknowledge the Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Professor Nzimande, the Deputy Minister, Dr. Nomalungelo Kina, the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, the Honorable Ms. Shelley Makubela, the Whip of the Portfolio Committee on STI, the Honorable Tembeka Mchunu, the members of the Diplomatic Corps, the special representative of the Chinese Ministry of Science and Technology, Consul Wong Tao Zhao, advisors of the minister, the chairpersons and the CEOs of the DSTI entities, special guests of the minister and the deputy minister, oh no, right? Professor Ukosma Revate, who's going to give us a keynote address on AI, business representatives, government departments, or civil society representatives, teachers and learners from the following schools: Anton Lembete, MST Academy, Crystal Spring Primary School, Mteto Musha Primary School, Georgetown High School, Nondomiso High School, Kwanxusa High School, Leiden Primary School, Mvula Primary School, Trafalgar High School. We also have students from the University of the Western Cape and Cape Town, the exhibitors, media, SABC TV, Umhlobo Wenene and Zibonele FM. Ladies and gentlemen, you are all welcome. I would like to request Buhleo the safety briefing. If we have someone to take us through, we need to be sure we know where to go in an event of unnatural occurrences happening. My friend, don't look surprised, right? This is not quite. Okay, you can. Okay, so maybe let me then invite the minister to take this opportunity to address us. Let's welcome the minister.
DG, I thought Busho was offering to make a safety briefing. Come and do it. What happens if my speech brings some things we haven't thought about?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have bathrooms on the same floor to the right of the building. So as you get out, you'll find bathrooms as you go down the stairwell. So up the stairwell or down the rail. So down the rail, you can find bathrooms. In the event of a fire, the children. We have more children coming through the, so we have children coming through, but ideally, please do not run. And then in the event of an emergency, we will all gather where you've entered at the front entrance, past the atrium outside. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Bushle. Program Director, our DG, Dr. Mlungi Stele, Chair of the Portfolio Committee, Ms. Makubela, Portfolio Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, and the members of the Portfolio Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation who are here. I've got to get things in order, you see. These are my political bosses, so I must start with them. Otherwise, it's not nice to come to the Portfolio Committee and when you look at the members, they all look so angry. So you are most welcome. I'm very pleased that you are here. Our Deputy Minister, Dr. Nomalungelo Gina, my special advisor, Ngaba Mandela, our science expert, Dr. Derek Swartz, members of the Diplomatic Corps who are with us here, the Deputy Directors General of our department, chairpersons and CEOs of our entities, vice chancellors and leaders of business, our special guest, Professor Vukosi Marivate of the University of Pretoria, who will be delivering a guest lecture today on artificial intelligence, and Professor George Painter, Professor of Pharmacology at Emory University in the United States of America, a distinguished researcher and innovator. Educators and learners from various schools, exhibitors and members of the media. Let me begin by thanking you for attending this, what we call the pre-budget vote, stakeholder and public engagement program. Today is an important occasion for our department and for our public science system, as we will present our 2026-2027 budget vote in Parliament later this afternoon. The budget vote gives us an opportunity to account for the progress made in the previous financial year and to reflect on the performance and resilience of our national system of innovation in a rapidly changing national and global environment. Indeed, we are continuing to have these two contradictory poles in the world today. As science advances, so also is war. And some of the wars today, by the way, they use science. Like the Israeli government is using AI to bomb people in Gaza. It's a contradictory reality that we must face, that while science has got so much potential to solve so many of our problems, at the same time it can be used for destructive purposes, which means to be a proper scientist, you must be a scientist for justice, a scientist for peace, and a scientist for development of our countries. Though the world faces some of these challenges that I'm talking about, South Africa still has one of the largest and most advanced public science systems on the African continent. We must, however, continue to strengthen the capacity of our science system so that it can respond more effectively to our country's most pressing priorities. I'm sorry, I greeted everybody except my real special guests who are sitting in front here. So, you are most welcome. Namugelekile. You look so nice. I only saw you last night when we were having dinner. This morning you look really sparkling in your uniform. And very good. You are most welcome. My apologies that I didn't. You are the most special people compared to all of those who are here today. Okay. As I often emphasize, in the 21st century, no country can hope to achieve its development goals without meaningfully building its science, technology, and innovation capabilities. For this reason, We must continue to strengthen the ability of our public science system to produce sustainable solutions in response to Africa's racialized, gendered, and spatial inequalities, reducing poverty and unemployment, unlocking new sources of growth, addressing energy, water, and food security, reducing crime and fostering social cohesion, improving healthcare and education, and advancing climate adaptation and mitigation. As you are aware, we have our own policy roadmap as the department and government, which is our Decadal Plan, our 10-year plan for science, technology, and innovation in South Africa, 2022 to 2032. In line with this plan, the Deputy Minister and I will later brief Parliament on progress and future priorities in the following areas: driving innovation in critical sectors such as mining, manufacturing, agriculture, and health; strengthening our capabilities in space science, the digital economy, and technology innovation; supporting our country's just energy transition and deepening collaboration with industry; embedding science, technology, and innovation at sub-national level while advancing indigenous knowledge systems. This is a very important point. Our science system at the moment is best and almost exclusively organized at national level. We don't have science platforms and structures at sub-national level. For instance, we are in Cape Town Metro here. There's lots of science, technology, and innovation happening here in Cape Town. But we have no structure to bring all these players in Cape Town to be able to share knowledge, share experiences, and also look at their work in relation of the needs of this important region of our country. So that's one of my aims, chair of the portfolio committee this time around, that we all work together to build science structures, provincial level, district level, to local municipal level, because that's how we're going to harness the system to be able to do what we wanted to do. We also do need to deepen transformation within the national system of innovation and expanding science engagement. What we are doing here today, during the day of our budget vote, is part of science engagement. We have science players here who are very important, and we've also got others who are interested in science. It's something that is very important for us to do. Today's program also supports our strategic objective of building, as I say, greater public awareness of the contribution of our public science system to human development through stronger engagement and communication. That is why we chose this venue as well. Iziko's education department works closely with schools, communities, and special interest groups to develop quality educational programs and resources, which also makes it especially fitting to have the learners as part of our special guests. By the way, our department, when it was formed in 1994 by the democratic government, it was the Department of Science, Arts and Culture, then. That's what it was. It brought together science and arts and culture. So we are not in foreign territory when we are in a museum. I hope the little ones have had a chance, I've been told, to look at the museum, and we were also taking photos against those big bones hanging on top there. A particular highlight of today's program is the guest lecture by Professor Marivate, which will be formally introduced shortly. We are also invited, by the way, to engage with exhibitions which are curated around a range of exciting science topics. Now, on the road ahead, for the current financial year, our department's budget allocation is 10.437 billion rand. We will dedicate this amount and other forms of income to expanding the scale, visibility, and impact of our work. I must say, by the way, this is very little money if we are to advance science, technology, and innovation in our country. That's why in the next 3 years, despite this shortage, these are the things that we want to do. And this is how I will conclude, because I mustn't speak here as if I'm the guest speaker or I'm the main speaker. I'm only just laying the ground for Professor Marivate and also for our budget vote in the afternoon. So some of our key strategic priorities, I must share this with you. Firstly, we need to intensify efforts to raise gross expenditure on research and development to 1.5% of the GDP. We are now at 0.61, and we are supposed to achieve this by 2030. That's quite a big ask and a tall order, but I would urge all our science players, especially the private sector, that they make their own contribution as well to this so that we reach this level. We also committed to accelerate transformation and expansion of human resources and the research workforce in our sector. We also are committing to strengthen the coordination and direction across the national system of innovation through, amongst others, the Interministerial Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation, and the Presidential Plenary on Science, Technology and Innovation. Those are some of our instruments which we use to create platforms to bring together everybody. We also are committed to maintaining support for key science projects such as the Square Kilometre Array and strengthening pandemic preparedness capacity. Forging strategic innovation compacts with STI-intensive state departments in our government and private sector partners in line with the priorities of our decadal plan. Upgrading critical science infrastructure and developing critical high-end skill, including through the presidential PhD program. Mobilizing more funding and resources to expand the impact of key programs such as artificial intelligence, energy security, space, vaccine manufacturing, and indigenous knowledge systems. Continuing to strengthen strategic partnerships, especially across Africa and the global South. One of our commitments with a few of our ministers on the continent, which we want to bring together so that we see how we drive this, is to actually create an Africa Research and Development Fund that's informed by priorities in our continent. Of our friends who are our donors are also important in this journey. The difference this time is that our true friends, we will see them by supporting what we have set as our agenda as the continent. Because often, donor-driven programs, there are countries, by the way, in the African continent that do not have a state budget from the fiscus on science. It's entirely dependent on donors. The unintended consequence sometimes is that we then tend to pursue priorities set by donors rather than priorities set by the African continent. It's going to be a big battle, this, but we have to wage it if we are to ensure that science, technology, and innovation doesn't become the new colonizer for the African continent, but it becomes a means and a platform for the liberation and development of our continent. We are also committed to increasing public awareness about the contribution of our public science system to human development through a stronger public engagement, communication campaign, as well as working together, as I have said, with the African continent and the global South. In conclusion, I wish to thank all our entities and distinguished partners and stakeholders. The progress we'll be highlighting this afternoon has been made possible by your support and your participation in our programs, and by the research work that you are doing in your different spaces. We value your continued input and partnership, and look forward to achieving even greater advances in science, technology, and innovation together. I'm looking forward also to having you, even if some of you may be here, to be able to watch our budget vote for those who are not going to be able to go to Parliament. By the way, we don't have a Parliament building at the moment. Our science expert was saying that there were some what? What are these things that normally light fires and things like that? Guy Fawkes. We were visited by Guy Fawkes in our Parliament. That's why we are not having a proper building. I would have liked to have welcomed you in the gallery of our Parliament. I must say, Ngaba, I'm also looking forward to delivering my speech this afternoon and close my week, because I can't wait to go to the stadium tomorrow. For the game between Orlando Pirates and Durban City, which we hope it will truly be a historic game tomorrow. Thank you very much.
So let's welcome our minister's special guest. So, are we done, Busa? Are there still more coming? Okay. No, that's good. Minister, if you were not a minister, I would have responded to your last comments about tomorrow. Yeah, but protocol doesn't permit. Suffice to say, we helped you. And I was at Loftus to make sure that Sundowns do not win last week. So when you're in the world of honey, and you must please remember the neighbors. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the last group of our special visitors are here, and this is really fantastic when you're having the young ones. We also know, Minister, the challenge of the attention challenge. They're gonna make sure that by 12 o'clock we're done, because otherwise you'll see them walking up and down. It is my pleasure, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce Professor Vukosi Marivate, who's a professor of computer science at the University of Pretoria, and he also holds the APSA Chair of Data Science. He's an accomplished individual who was appointed by the Secretary General, if I'm correct, as one of the experts to serve on the United Nations Independent International Scientific Panel on Artificial Intelligence this year. He was also announced by the president last night. This is to check how many of you listened to the state president when he was announced as one of the recipients of the Order of Mapungubwe Silver. He specializes in developing machine learning and artificial intelligence methods to extract insights from data, with a particular focus on the intersection of ML, AI, and natural language processing. His research is dedicated to improving the methods, tools, and availability of data for local or low-resource languages. As the leader of Data Science for Social Impact Research Group in the Computer Science Department, Professor Marivate is interested in using data science to solve societal challenges. He has worked on projects related to science, energy, public safety, and utilities, among others. He is a co-founder of Lilaba AI, an African startup focused on AI for Africans by Africans. He is a chief investigator on the Masakane Research Foundation, which aims to develop NLP technologies for African languages. Professor Marivate is also a co-founder of the Deep Learning Indaba, the leading grassroots machine learning and artificial intelligence conference on the African continent that aims to empower and support African researchers and practitioners in the field. And today, he has been invited to share his wisdom and expertise on how to better harness artificial intelligence for inclusive and sustainable social economic development. Let's give him a warm welcome.
Okay, I think before I start, I'll just do the obligatory that way I'm here. Thank you for the invitation. And I will also try to keep everything running smoothly. In my space, yes, I work on language. I have many, many hats that I wear, and I've also been working with a number of people at DSTI through the years, especially over the last 11 years or so. But what's maybe to add on, outside the UN Independent Scientific Panel, I'm also at Smart Africa on the African AI Council, board member on Partnership on AI, and the Global Future Councils on Data Futures in these spaces. Now, yes, you can say I am all of those things, but what's important is that I'm an African researcher who works on making language infrastructure. My personal mission is to make sure that Africans have agency during these ongoing AI revolutions. Let me just see. This is our lab or group at the University of Pretoria, Data Science for Social Impact. As was said, we work in these areas of language. And this is just some of the people who really do the work, right? And I'm just the principal investigator leading on one other side. Let's see. So let's start actually first, given the time that I'm here, with some definitions. So what's artificial intelligence? you have a machine, it exists in some environment, it takes action to achieve a goal. So our humble robot or traffic light is a machine that is on a corner of a street. It can go from green, orange to red, and the goal is to control traffic. That is AI, by definition. Right, yes, you can have robotics, all those things, but they all are within this definition when you look at them. What's machine learning? Machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. I know it tends to be interchangeably used, where you have a machine that learns patterns from some data that it's actually reading in. So if we think about what is called supervised learning, for example, let's say you've got X-ray images, and then you have a radiologist or a doctor, they sit and then they put and say what's inside that X-ray, and you get thousands of these that are now tagged. You now give the machine the X-ray plus the tag of what's inside, and the machine learns the patterns, and then in the future, you can just give it the picture, and then it predicts what might be the malady. That's machine learning, right? Another way you can have is that you can have some vitals, information, blood pressure, temperature, all those things, the same thing, and say, no, this is the problem. Somebody might have hypertension if they've got these type of vitals, or you know that they have them. Then you feed that again into a machine learning algorithm, and it pops out a model that now, when you take in vitals, it then predicts what the person might have. The other ones could be things like computer vision. Let's say now you have spatial imaging or satellite imagery of a location, and that location you have places where baobab trees are actually planted. Now you mark all of those. Now you can train a model that, given spatial images in the future, it then identifies where the baobab trees actually are. And this can be very useful, especially for environmental monitoring automatically, right? Instead of just saying that somebody's going to always have to go out there and check if those trees have not been cut down due to human activity. The other might be identifying buildings, identifying roads. If you understand, why an organization like StatsSA exists is to count. When you count, you now can budget better. So one of the things is that if you know where all the dwellings are, if you know where the roads are, even if they are not marked yet on the map, you can estimate better the population. Right, these things are possible in these type, and there's a lot of work that goes in this area. I'm just highlighting one. Some of our students in our masters in big data science worked for 1 year, on one of their capstone projects to actually do the baobab project. I'm not talking theoretically here. And what then they could do is identify where you see the green is where their system was able to identify where the baobab trees. Red is yet, at that time, was where they were actually missing. So the system wasn't yet there. But then you can see you start somewhere and then you work to improve these types of systems. The other side is that instead of doing this classification or categorization, you can do real-time prediction of a number. So one, for example, we had one student at Ames with Stellenbosch, at also University of Pretoria, where we're looking at near casting. So you're just trying to predict for the next 12 hours how much solar, wind you're going to have. If you can do that, then you can then estimate how much energy you're going to have in the next 12 hours. Right, for renewables, that is one. And then you could also do the same thing of trying to take in information like weather and then estimating how many pests might actually be around in a specific area and assist in agriculture. Right, so this for machine learning. Now, the thing is, for most of you, when we've said artificial intelligence, in your head, you're thinking about those chatbots. All right, so let's explain also that that's one part of AI. So these are large language models. So what you do, it's the same thing. They have to learn a pattern. You give them a large data set of text, typically at the beginning, and then you remove a word and you ask it to predict what's the word that you removed. Right, this is something that we all know, it's predictive text, right, on your phone that just fills in. But then that's how actually they get trained first. You train them on an objective, and then hopefully they learn something about the language, the semantics, the grammar, those types of things are learned through that first type of machine learning. Then the second one is that you do fine-tuning. You give them hundreds and thousands, millions of pairs of questions and answers. How to get healthy, how do I study better? And then somebody has written a potential answer to that thing, and then the machine learns now to connect what you type in and then responding in a way that looks like human writing. That's the second level of learning. And then the last one is there is some human feedback. So there are people who work, they submit the questions, they get the answer, and then they rank the answer. So you will see in some of these chatbots, they ask you at the end, thumbs up or thumbs down. And that's the last piece. And that's what actually trains these systems, but you need lots and lots of data to be able to do this well. So AI is not something that starts in 2022 at the end of the year with the release of one of these large language models into the public. Actually, we've been in exponential growth for over 2 decades. So if you look at this, this is how many papers are submitted. There's a preprint server called Archive, and many, many people who work in machine learning, as you submit your paper for a conference or a journal, you also upload it there before it even gets reviewed. And if you look at this, if you were in May 2016, there were about 568 papers per month. So it was less than 100 a day. Today, we are over, I'm pretty sure we're getting close to 10,000 papers a month that are showing up on Archive. That's the activity on AI research across the world. So, but then AI, what's natural language processing? There's also natural language processing where it just looks about processing language. And some of it might be using AI, some of it might not. And if we just look at that one, it's the same thing. Where if you go back, it was 148 papers in May 2016, and now you're over 3,700. So this is showing you that we've been at this for 20 plus years. In this acceleration, one being because computing has become cheaper, there was data that was becoming easier to access, and then the algorithms then matching that availability. On the other side, if we look at AI diffusion, let's say in South Africa, it's how many people between 15 and 64 who are using some of this generative AI. So these large language models are called, or the ones that create images or videos. And South Africa is at the highest at the moment on the continent. It's at 23.1 as per this Microsoft report, and that just got released, I think, 2 weeks ago. And in the globe, we are number 46. So a lot of people are using these systems. But there's challenges. One, can these systems speak our language? So in 2023, one of our researchers at my other hat at the lab, collaborators, she put in this very simple request at that time. Count from 1 to 10 in isiZulu. And that's how the model responded. Go 1, go 2. All right. If we move on to the next example, translate from isiZulu to English, kuyabiza ukugibela ibanoi. And then the response was, he insults him by calling him a coward. All right, sure, the current new models might now do this much better, but that was supposed to be, it's expensive to go on an aeroplane. These are things where, sure, isiZulu, about 25% of our country speaks it, and as such, just imagine now for a language like isiNdebele, Siswati, what the experience of our citizens is in these systems. So these LLMs have been growing on one side, and hopefully I've proven to you it's been now decades. It is not just 3 years or 4 years. But if you look and say, what for the English-based systems, if we have a heuristic of what's the size of a Wikipedia, how many articles are written on Wikipedia per language, as the heuristic of understanding how much data is available. English is about 7 million articles. In the top 10, Egyptian Arabic is the only one on the continent. Then there's Swahili, 80,000. There's Yoruba, 33,000. There's isiZulu, 11,000. And then Sesotho, less than 1,000. And up to a few years ago, until DSTI invested in the SAWIC program, there was not even one article isiNdebele. I think now they're reaching 200. So that shows you the scale of the challenge. Then at the same time, even when we're evaluating these systems, that globally, there's most of the time for our languages, and a lot of our languages, there's this scale that you look at. You have winning languages, these very high resource, English, French, German. isiZulu, I think, is a rising star, or a hopeful. And then most of the world's languages, 80%, are either scraping by or they are going to be left behind. They are going to disappear. And most of the time, the data that is there is about things like translation. It might not be about good question and answering, comprehension, those types of things. So we can't evaluate them well. This is also continuing to show you the scale of the challenge in these spaces. Who also gets to do research in these areas becomes an important question. So this is ICLR. ICLR, International Conference of Learning Representations. I was one of the program chairs in 2023 when for the first time it came to the African continent. It was in Rwanda. And this year, this shows you the breakdown of institutions and which countries they come from. So the US and China, let's say, are almost at 40-40. And Africa would have been at that corner there. But I think for this year, it's 0 in terms of institutions from Africa, but it doesn't mean that there's no Africans that are publishing. It's just that they are affiliated at other institutions. So caveat, this is only one way to measure. This is not the way, right, or the only way. And remember, there's brain circulation if we plan for it. That yes, Africans, just like myself, I studied my PhD in the US, and I'm back. And how you plan for those types of things. But if we look beyond just maybe machine learning and AI core, let's look at natural language processing. That story also becomes very interesting. This is one paper contributed by a few collaborators and showing actually over the last 2 decades or so an acceleration of work on African language, AI, and natural language processing. Right, where now you can see it also went up. Sure, there's other places where you can see activity that is actually going on. Okay, I'm gonna have to pick up. Now, there are things that then we can also pick up from what's happened on the African continent and development. So, an important thing for everybody to leave with, number 1, is we all must wake up. African AI is not going to build itself. We are going to have to get our hands dirty and do it in this area. So a few thoughts. 1, technology is a multiplicative force. It does not, technology by itself is not, does not improve lives. Right, and this is an important thing because there's a lot of promises that are being made that AI will just improve lives. Doesn't work that way, it never has. Right? So what we must do is that it will amplify existing human intent and institutional capacity. And if the underlying foundations are weak, what is going to happen is that it will also amplify inequalities. Where now there are winners who are taking all of the spoils of these revolutions, and then everybody is left behind, but then because they're also not being served, they get the worst parts of the negative. Right, so this is it's a great book to read by Kantaro Toyama on these types of things. Then we need to focus on building the human foundations, access, competency, and motivation, and Africa needs to move away from being a consumer. Being told that, no, just wait, you will just get it from us, and then you don't need to build is not, we cannot really do that. And then lastly, we need to then think about how we prioritize our communities as we build these things, and that's how I'm going to show you what has been going on. So we need to build differently because we know that technology must be deeply rooted in our context, languages, and values. Number 2, compared to most, a lot of regions in the world, actually, where you think about universities, big companies, or with major regulation frameworks, Africa's AI ecosystem, I can tell you for the last 11 or 12 years, has been dominated by grassroots movements and civic organizations. So if you're only looking at universities or the private sector or the public sector, you are missing the picture. Right, but if you look at the grassroots, like Deep Learning in Masakane or Data Science Africa and many, many others, that's where you see the activity. right? So I'll talk about Masakane. We started this in 2019, Masakane Research Foundation, and it was launched to make sure we now put African languages on the natural language processing and AI kind of map. It has 3,000 plus members. It has more than 150 languages. Africa has 2,000 to 3,000 languages. Many, many papers as a distributed network. People just join. You are not at you just join and say, I want to work on this participatory way. 3 awards, many, many data sets out there. It started on trying to connect people. This was at the Deep Learning Indaba in 2019, and then really finding that Africans can find themselves in this AI world and build up. As I said, ICLR was in 2023, was in Rwanda, and the largest workshop was actually the African Natural Language Processing Workshop in the main auditorium in Kigali. The first paper, which is this participatory paper, ended up winning the first Wikimedia Research Award from Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia, for democratizing the internet. Right, in this space. And Masakane has gone on, and I would say it's the #1 AI research lab on the continent in this space, and it continues. In some ways was incubated by the DSTI. Because Imran is here. I remember if we were saying who signed the first check. In this space, going back to 2016 and 2017, we were thinking, how do we strengthen African machine learning so that Africans can become critical contributors, owners, and shapers of the coming advances? This vision has not changed. This was, 2016 we wrote this. Right, and the Indaba has grown from the first meeting was 300 people at VET, with a number of African countries represented, to last year, which I'll show you now. And it also has Indaba X conferences. I think this is one of, it should be in the Western Cape, or no, I might be wrong, or in KZN, which are country-specific smaller conferences. And with those ones, they have expanded that in 2025, they reached 50 out of 55 African countries. Again, if you're looking at universities, big corporations, or the public sector, you're missing the picture. Right, in these spaces. Last year we were in Kigali, in Rwanda, almost 1,300 participants. And one of the things that's very unique about this movement, almost 40% being women. Right, and that's the picture at the end. So being there, seeing this, changes the way that you think about what's possible about African AI. Oh, are we good there? Oh. And this year, in August, we'll be in Lagos in Nigeria for the first time. A question for DSTI and those gathered here who can be our future partners. Where are we going in 2027? Are we bringing it back home? So let's make it happen. And this is carrying on a tradition inside the AI ecosystem globally, where you've had grassroots organizations coming and filling in these gaps. Data Science Africa started in 2015 in Nyeri in Kenya. Deep Learning Indaba, as I said, 2016, 2017. You have Masakane there. Kipu is a South American conference that looked at deep learning in Indaba and said we should start ourselves in Latin America. Right, there's America's NLP that also does work on Latin American languages inspired by Masakane. Right, and more. There's AfriClimate AI that looks at climate and AI, just launched, I think it's in HQ for now is VET. You've got Sisonke Biotech that looks at AI and AI and health, and then the African Computer Vision Summer School. These are all these initiatives that young people are starting and they're running. What have we been doing at University of Pretoria at our lab, Data Science for Social Impact? So on one, it's expanding data. We were part of a consortium for the last, for 2024, 2025, to collect a number, almost 18,000 hours of speech data. So at University of Pretoria, we collected 3,000 hours of isiZulu, isiXhosa, isiTswana, Setswana, Sotho, Tshivenda, and isiNdebele data. This is to enable speech recognition systems where you can speak in Tshivenda and then it transcribes for you. Right now, that data is available. There's also a project, there was a project in Nigeria, Kenya, and in Rwanda. We work on techniques to improve that even if we don't have enough data, how do we improve the performance of these models, even given that situation. So this is some work that we did. And then also releasing these tools publicly and people actually being able to use them in their research, and globally in this case. We also take care of the case of code mixing or code switching. South Africans, if you live anywhere, you don't just speak purely in one language, you mix it. How then do these systems actually hear you and understand what you're trying to say? On the other side, back to 2020 or so, we were working on building, for example, a Setswana language model. It's a smaller one. And through this and what we learned in 2020, able to work also a few years later and release Pula, which is then a large language model based on Setswana. Again, and this is then to keep on adding, where now this year we are focused on releasing a Pan-African large language model by the end of the year. Right, so I think 40 plus African languages being covered. And the other side is then thinking about how is our community impact? How are we working with communities as we're building these technologies, led by Dr. Tsoshela Tsochidi, who's actually from our African Languages Department, who works with us in computer science. We're working on playbooks on digitizing African languages, and we have released the first version of this, and there'll be another one on small language models in the next few weeks. And there's much, much, much more that you can then read about us here. But we need more, not enough. Hopefully you're getting it. None of this is enough. We need thousands times more. So one was, how do we deal with licensing issues when it comes to IP and data and models? Here highlighting Data Science Law Lab at University of Pretoria and CIPIT at Strathmore in Nairobi in Kenya, who've released a new license called the Nyolato Obodo Open Data License that is more equitable and balances between the needs of communities and then the data also being open. At Lelapa, we also looked at the same challenge and then released another license called the Setu license that also tries to do the same things. If you're an IP scholar, you will see the differences, but these are trying to enable these areas. At the same time, as we're doing this, it's one thing to just talk and say, or do some research and it sits in the lab. How do you get these things out there and people actually using them? And for me, being a co-founder of a startup, I can talk a little bit about the lab AI, where we've been then working on then say, how do we build these real-world AI systems? And we want to build resource efficient, that you don't need as much data, you don't need as much compute to be able to get this right, and be then multilingual across the continent. So at the moment, we're focusing on things like customer centers, where now you're enabling people to speak in their languages in these areas, and then having AI systems actually processing that. On the other side, if you have these multilingual services, we hope that it opens up opportunity for many, many more of the citizens of this continent, right? That the language does not act as a barrier on what they're doing, and then this then will bring in efficiencies and hopefully a new local AI infrastructure that people can actually build on. So we want to build local AI for Africa, and then take these learnings and share them also with the world and expand into other areas. So what can we all do? Going back to the minister's speech, the US investment in research is over 3%. Singapore, just as another country, over 2%. Any African country, less than 1%. 1% is the African Union's benchmark. No African country meets it. And South Africa, for ourselves, we're not using that 1%, we are aiming for 1.5%, as per the NDP, but we are only at 0.61. And this then requires us that we need to fill in this gap. So we have to triple how much we spend on research in general, not just AI. Right? And this is going to require massive private sector coming into this space. It is not the public purse cannot take that. And this also is connected to my argument that you don't get AI and say it benefits us without actually getting into the R&D. Ending off, what have we seen? Communities have grown formalization, impact of the work that we're doing, rise in seniority, increase in opportunities for many people across the continent, not just in South Africa. The challenges, though, are still there. Mobility is still very challenging on the continent. Moving around, like having been connected with the Indaba up until last year, I was a trustee, and then now because of the UN assignment, have moved out of the Indaba to let that keep on going with newer young people. Moving thousands of people across the continent is hard. And that also is telling you that moving researchers is very hard on the continent. Absorbing the funding available. My thesis still stands. There's more money in African AI than Africa can absorb. Unfortunately, this money is not coming from Africa. Because the capacity and the capability is it's not a lot of people. As I say, like, I don't want one of me. I want 1,000 of me. Right, in this area, we need to increase opportunities for professionals and students, developing and supporting faculty and academics, and we need to choose our own directions. We should not be dictated to or saying, this is what you must optimize. Look at your local situation and say, this is what we want out of these things, and then we must do these local R&D investments. On our side, this is why we're building DSTI, which is the African Institute for Data Science and AI, based at the University of Pretoria, where really our vision is where we want an Africa where innovation in data science AI shapes a better future for the whole continent, and you can connect with us. And I'm very thankful, acknowledging on DHET's side, the Future Professors Program, and also incubated with the ideas with a number of other partners. And it's really something where you're able to bring in researchers and share and then build together. And what we want to get to is that the current challenges is because the talent and ideas in a lot of Africa are constrained by access, mentorship, and institutional support. So how do we work to solve for these pieces? So as I close off, I'm very thankful to many of our collaborators who work with us to look at all of these ideas. I'm also very thankful to all of our funders, many different ones. You do not do this without resources that come from many stakeholders, both in the private sector, the public sector, and even from people in kind for this work. And I, being the chair of data science, which is the APSA chair of data science, I'm very thankful for APSA's support actually since 2018 when I actually joined the University of Pretoria. So thank you for having me, and I'm hoping we leave here with something on understanding what is our continental situation. I don't know if are we still going to do the questions or okay.
No, thank you very much, Professor Marivat. Did you hear him, right? Colleagues, we would like to give you an opportunity to engage with the professor. Please feel free to engage with him. And then introduce yourself if you don't mind.
There's a mic coming. Maybe we can do 2 or 3 questions at a time.
Yeah.
Hello. My name is Yavelam Shumbela. I'm with the University of Western Cape with the ESEL project, Innovation in Energy Storage and Innovation Labs. I have a degree in mechanical engineering from Nelson Mandela University. And I would like to ask, how do you handle biases, noise, when it comes to training data sets, especially in the African context? Because, for example, I think it was Pula on the news where it came out that they're trying to put more African languages in AI. So how do you separate the noise from what you actually want?
Great. Andel? Yes.
Thanks, DJ. Good morning, everyone. Morning, Minister and Jim. Just 2 quick ones. I had hoped, Prof, you touched on some of the practical real-life applications you mentioned, call centers. So I'd hoped you would spend a bit more time on that, especially maybe from the public sector point of view. What are some of the, just in your view, just examples, it can't be exhaustive, some of the areas that you think the country grapples with, serious challenges that you think AI could possibly be able to help and possibly, you know, what are the risks associated with some of that. And then lastly, just your own views. I know it's a contested terrain, but just your own views around AGI, how far you think we are from that and all of that. Thanks.
Thank you for a wonderful talk. Sean Atcham, Knights Innovation Support Center with Sanedi. I think one of the biggest problems that and I love the talk particularly because of the fact that we're talking about African languages. And it's not just language, but dialects as well. There's a flood of note-taking applications and translation systems that are required. And the big question is, you can use your own voice, and when it comes to licensing, giving away the rights to your own voice is one challenge that I'd love to know how we're handling licensing for that. And then secondly, I firmly believe that your view of municipal level engagement is not just important, it is absolutely critical, so that we have the dialects, the accents, the language in each municipality being catered for, so that when we are wanting to give and empower learning processes, using note-taking applications, using things like ChatGPT and others, I'd like to hear your views on how we're going to be handling the licensing, so that if we were to grant a license to ChatGPT, to any of the note takers, how are we going to handle that?
Okay, Prof? Yes. Yes, thank you for the questions. I'll go backwards and then hopefully catch everything. So on thinking about licensing, this is why, as I said, like the important work on AI and IP is very important. For many of these systems, as soon as you sign up, the terms of service either then tell you directly that whatever you upload, they use in whichever way. And that's a part that, on the side of policymaking and regulation, that can change. I'm not saying either one way or another, but I say it must be informed by the values that we espouse as a country, of saying this is how we would like things like voice. One country might take voice as almost being a biometric, and as such, it is treated with, if you are processing voice, it must be done within the borders of that country, within a data center in those spaces. So this is something to think about on how these are going as the policy-making space in South Africa and also the continent is going on. At the same time, yes, we need to make sure our voices are actually recognized in these systems, because we call it speech recognition. And to do that is still going to require a massive investment. As I like, yes, we've got 3,000 hours of new data. We're really interested in seeing what people do with it as they build. But then there will be the dialects. There will be all the different ways that language actually, even just in South Africa with 12 official languages. We have one of our projects is actually on South African Sign Language this year, where we're doing video processing for translation. So somebody being able to sign, and then on the other side being able to extract the text and then translate in real time. Right, these are things that have to be enabled. Coming back, maybe AGI, that one is a no comment. It is not, I come from the tradition of reinforcement learning. My PhD was in that. So it's always like, okay, you can go infinite, but it takes infinite compute and infinite time and infinite data and infinite money. We do see that if you look more narrowly of saying these are the types of features or the things that you behaviors you want trying to see, they have been coming out and they're amazing. If you go back 20 years ago and think of what you have available today, telling that to a person 20 years ago would have been completely mind-blowing. In terms of the public sector, yes, I said language can be infrastructure that we build on. If we're thinking, I think there's some projects that I've seen on how you're enabling, for example, education of small-scale farmers. in their local languages to be able to get information, again, in real time, but in their language, being able to ask questions and receive answers. We're doing this through a number of PhD students and collaborations within the university and other organizations here in the country. I think one covered by a research magazine at University of Pretoria was with our Future Africa Institute, where we were looking at CPED and agriculture systems. If we come into the judicial system, I've worked with a number of people, one being at that time the deputy editor of Mail and Guardian, Athandiwe Saba, and I remember her explaining the challenge of translation in the courts, especially at the local courts. There you could enable, not that it replaces the human, but it augments and works with the with the interpreters and translators so that we can have better records, right, coupled with digitization in these spaces. So these are just examples. And then lastly, on the bias, yes, bias is a challenge. I'm on a sabbatical year this year, building the institute and then working on some research. And the research that I'm focused on is especially on how do you better evaluate these systems in such a way that the behavior that you try to get people to be able to build towards has less bias or discrimination inside it, especially for our language context. And that is, for me, a better way than thinking, no, it's about just building more large language models. You can't, if you can't actually evaluate them well to say how do they fit the populations that we say they are fitting in a space. I don't know, yeah, I think there'll be another set of questions.
Two sisters, eh?
Good day, Prof. Marivate. Thank you for your insightful lecture. Mamelo Madehe, I'm a researcher in the CLAYS research group in chemical engineering at UCT. I'm also the founder of a startup called Amanzi X, which we build machine learning models to take leaks in water pipelines to reduce non-revenue water. So on your point on how grassroots is where we should look at, my question is how do we actually resource these grassroots builders? Because mainly compute, funding, and data pipelines flow through institutions. So how do we break that bottleneck and ensure that these grassroots builders like myself have access to funding and funding to de-risk our projects, et cetera, et cetera? Thank you.
Great.
Hi, Prof. Thank you for the very informative lecture, very well detailed as well. My name is Zoe Zonde. I'm currently studying my master's in chemical engineering at the University of Cape Town under Nico Fisher's research group. I think my question was just more about AI awareness in all of this. I think obviously because it's been researched for over 2 decades now, and really it's a learning process, it's learning itself, it's growing and it's being trained by our own critiques and inputs. I think my main question is about the ethical use and awareness of our AI. How are we going to use this, and how feasible would it be to probably start this awareness at very early stages of learning, especially for the youth, very young ages, like early grades, to really understand the impact of AI and just how strong it is? Because you touched on such important ways AI is being used, but there are still some very unethical ways. I mean, it blurs lines between what is and isn't ethical. How feasible would it be to actually cultivate that kind of sense of responsibility and fair judgment when using AI within the youth and younger generations, so they're not having continuous cognitive decline, almost having AI work for them rather than work with it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Are there any further comments? Yes, brother.
Greeting. Especially to Prof. Highly appreciated the lecture. My name is Lungelo Mbeje from UWCT under the ACIL project. Thanks to our supervisor here. So I so wish I can ask the question based on our project that we're doing there about the green world, but I see that we'll spend the whole day, basically, if I were to ask you. So I'll just like to focus my question on the grassroots, where we're talking about children. I'm from the rural areas, right? So what I've noticed is that the education system we have, it's in English. So how can we use AR to integrate the learning processes where we have to make sure that for example, mathematics and physical sciences, which are subjects that are almost like physical or need your brain. How can you integrate AI so that it can teach the children from high school to primary in their own language to better understand the subject? Thank you.
Great. Any questions?
Thank you, Prof, for the lovely presentation. My name is Ofense Litebele. I'm the manager of the Iziko Planetarium and Digital Dome, which is the structure just in front of you. I wanted to ask, what are the guardrails regarding IP within the language models? Because sometimes within academia and research, you have a case whereby there's a gap between funding and where the knowledge is sourced from. So how do we instill some form of policy whereby there could be some equity from, you know, the indigenous communities where some of these knowledge base, where some of the knowledge is extracted from? Is there a consideration around that within the research around AI? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question, and I'll go backwards again. Yes. When it comes to IP, it's a very important piece of unlocking these areas. So when we build language tools, one of the challenges that you hit and why people would say no, when we won't work on African languages, was this challenge of data, that where's the data? So that's why it's easy to build for a very high resource language. So when you look into that, you quickly understand that the challenge is not a technical one. So people, if you think that you're going to solve for low resource languages by saying it's a technical, I'm going to have a better algorithm, it is not. It's a societal issue. How does these voices get recorded? How is writing digitized? These types of things come in. So to unlock that, one is thinking about how people think about their work. That I create something and how then it gets shared. So on one side, for example, DSTI might have open science policy. But if you look at the real implementation, both in DSTI and DHAT and the universities, we are still found wanting. Right? On one side of saying people, because there's still a part of I want to control, that's one thing. The other might be, I also don't have the information on how the artifacts that I create in my research become easily available under a good license. Putting something online, which is one of the things we noted, like that was noted in a report by Landfrica about 3 weeks ago. A lot of people think by putting their data online, it means it's open source. If it doesn't have information about the license, it is basically closed. And you have a lot of resources, language resources that people have thought they put up online, people should just use. But then if you are an ethical researcher, you check and say, what is the license that this data is being released on? And if it doesn't have a license, then you say, you can't touch it. So our language resources are not that we don't have them, they are there. Some of them might be in somebody's garage, and they need digitization. Some of them might be online, it's just that they're not licensed. And the licensing can unlock, if it's like, you know, especially where it's considered, the equitable licensing tries to balance and say, a community might say, our data that we do create, we would like it to be used by people who are using it for public benefit, for non-commercial reasons. And then if somebody wants to use it for commercial reasons, they must come back to the community and talk about benefit sharing. And these are some of the things that require people to understand. And that's one of like why I highlighted the licensing in this area. It's a very important, like one of the pillars that we're going to need. On the question about children learning, it's again, AI is not going to solve our education. Just saying it is going to do it without doing the work of figuring out what are the things you can amplify within the education system that can improve teaching and identifying those things. So part of the wider work that we've been doing is with with DBE, for example. And providing information connected to the awareness question of how does AI work, what are its limitations currently, and then what are the things that can still be done. When we trained the Setswana Puerberta model, some of the data there was coming from DBE content on their website that is written in our languages, but then it's in PDF, and PDF is really bad for resharing and reusing. So I think the reason we're there is that we're also trying to go in and say, if you saved the content that is created during question papers or content that is for teaching in a way that is reusable by other researchers with very clear licenses, people will build on the other side. Very important piece. So AI, IP is important, but then we need to explore what are the things we can amplify to improve learning. It is not just because a chatbot is available, a child will learn better. That is not going to happen. Then going on kind of awareness, the Global Center of AI Governance. So you saw, I showed the index that says South Africa is at 23% in terms of people who are using generative AI. The Center of AI Governance last year released a report that said over 70% of South Africans, they are one, hadn't heard of the term AI. So we are also making very big assumptions about our population. Right, so it's still, we require on the parts of maybe my thinking 10 years ago was, how do we make sure from a lower level, things like computational thinking is there? So it might not be programming, but learning how computers, like a machine, actually processes inputs, and then you can then start in your head going like, oh, this is how I would build a program, even if you don't know how to program at all. And then when you add the layer of now you can learn patterns, you do machine learning and AI. So it's an important piece. On the first question, which was then on how do people interact with the grassroots, I just wanted to make sure I'm correct. So the Deep Learning Indaba X South Africa this year is going to be at UKZN in July. So if you want to support and sponsor these local ecosystems, those are some places to look at. I'm not affiliated, I'm just saying they're there. And then one of the parts is that there are many now initiatives to try and give young small builders opportunities in these areas. Some, I'm sure, are with the hyperscalers, so the big people who own the data centers themselves. You can look at some of the programs there. There are also local programs to try. I know with CHPC, they're trying to really get to a point where they can offer access to startups, especially to GPUs, and using them for training. And then more recently, we are part of the AI for Development Network, and we run the AI for D African Languages Lab at UP, but then we know that the one that's running through UCT is now doing consultations about access to compute. Right, because they will be building a massive reference GPU cluster based in UCT, but then being available widely. I know one of our PhD students was at the workshop last week here at UCT. So those opportunities are there. I can't list and say these are all, but we also try inside the university to use as many of them as possible. Yeah.
Okay, colleagues.
Oh, maybe one more thing.
Yeah.
Sorry. On the code, you can find the slides and also the resources if you just scan that. So.
I did not tell you deliberately that you are being streamed live on SABC. So.
Oh wow.
Oh yes, Ngaba. So. So in case you want to raise questions, we'll take the last round if you permit. As I say, oh, okay, then that announcement helped. Go ahead, my sister.
Hi, Shabazz here, PhD candidate at UCT. I wanted to ask, how do you think we can handle these bottlenecks that come with larger language models being available and storage capacities, RAM, VRAM, access storage?
Thank you. Was there a hand before? Yeah.
Thank you. I'm Moira Bladegroen from the University of the Western Cape, and I'm a teaching and learning specialist. So I'm not going to elaborate on the problems that we have at the moment with students and AI. That one we must speak privately. My question, my question is, we need to build capacity. Now, the courses that the students must take 3-4 years, but AI is developing much faster. What recommendation will you give to a student? Because at the moment, there's a big need for the developers, but also for security. And they cannot do both. Would you recommend that they do one after the other, and which one first?
Greetings, colleagues. I'm Mr. Ndole from deep rural area at Mkhanyakude district. I have questions, though I want to compliment and give questions, and maybe I will get clarity. Number one, thank you very much for the department to introduce the issue of coding and robotics in schools. It's much more appreciated. Thank you very much. But my issue is, or my worry is, because Professor or Dr. Blade has indicated that we need to go back to even to the municipality and have those scientists. But I will go further to say, let's even go further to deep rural area to have those scientists, because I'm the product of the deep rural area through Mandela Basari holder. It helped me. That is why I decided not to go to the private sector, but to go back to the school and implement what I've learned. The issue is, each and everyone who is talking here, we are indicating this issue of private sector. To say whatever we need to do, we need the intervention of private sector. Are we going, as much as the department is giving the budget for the schools, it's not enough, because to me, it should have been compulsory, Dr. Nzimande Usbal, to say all of us, we should be introducing coding and robotics in schools. But are we going to have enough support? Are we going to have enough resources in school? Thank you.
Thank you. The last one? No, it's the last one. Okay. Yes, go ahead, my sister. There at the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Razan Force. I'm here from private sector, Terraklum. We are part of a consortium, SASAM, which is a South African system of systems for agricultural modernization. And we are actually working with a bit of machine learning in the application. My question would be, I loved your presentation, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing and not underestimating your group of people in the room today. I really enjoyed the detail. It's just that sometimes I wonder, we did a recent site visit to Mtata in the Eastern Cape to launch our project, which is a solution for farmers, small-scale farmers specifically. And we ran into a lot of infrastructural challenges, connectivity issues, some of the users sharing phones, for example, and I just wanted to know, are we scaling in parallel infrastructure and AI and computing and like stuff that works on phones? Are people going to be able to use it? Yeah.
Okay, same again, go backwards. Yes, so the AI ecosystem is not just computing people or math. It's many people. I talked about the African Languages Lab that we're running at UP. It actually is us in computer science, math, African languages, and law. That's the lab. And the reason that we designed it that way is that we were like, okay, we're going to do some data work. We will likely do it with the linguists. We have to still deal with that we're not going to get enough data, so the mathematicians have to come up with new ways to think about the basis representation that then comes into the computing. And then the lawyers, I've already said why you need lawyers or law scholars in these spaces. And one of the things that had become clear maybe going back 4 or 5 years ago, even before the age of the large language model, is the interfaces are things that you cannot leave to computing people necessarily, I mean, computer scientists or mathematicians. And that's where the other side of computing, which is human-computer interaction, becomes very important. So I would encourage connecting with, there's AfriChai, the African Computer Human Interaction Conference. And I think Chai, the main global one, is finally, for the first time, is gonna come to the African continent. It's coming actually to South Africa. And it's very important. And I took my pilgrimage last year in I think late November, was in Egypt for AfriChai 2025. And there at the keynote, I was challenging the HCI researchers and saying, you have a major part to play when it comes to AI, because yes, I might design an LLM with a chat interface or a voice interface, but it's not necessarily meeting the users where they are. And I came in, when I went to that conference, I came in a few days earlier to also go to their tutorials and workshop, and it was very eye-opening. The things that you're describing of the system, somebody might be using data intermittently. Once a day, they switch on their phone for 5 minutes, they get their messages, they respond, and they switch it off until the next day. This is a lived reality for much of South Africa. We assume, because most of us now live in the metropolitan areas, that there's Wi-Fi all everywhere. So what you have to do is design for it. Yes, infrastructure should come, but at the same time, as we said, if we want to say these gains of these technologies are going to be met, we need to work within what we have and building innovation in that space. I'm not a representation of this department or the other ones that are connected with the question on the robotics at school, but it is, we need to support. And maybe connecting the two, one being at a level at the beginning of school or schooling, and then the other one be at universities. I think one of the things that's going to keep on becoming important is the skill of learning to learn, right? Because I might sit and say, oh, now because I have these AI systems that can help me summarize, I actually do this. I use some of these, they summarize and then they turn it into a podcast. And when I'm jogging, I jog, I listen. Right, and I know what I'm looking out for, and I'm trying to now catch up on something that, one of my students might be working on, so then I do that. But I'm in an area that is safe that I can run. I have access to almost unlimited internet. I've got all those things. So again, just saying the AI is there is not enough. It then is going to be that students must then understand the parts of this system can supercharge your learning, but you need to know what you're trying to learn and scaffold those things. And those is likely going to be where universities are going to have to really hammer that home. Right, and then yes, on the assessment side, obviously things are changing. I think many people are going back to paper assessment in a room and nothing online, but that's where we're going to go. On the first question about, yes, there is a bottleneck in a lot of these systems. Last year we were very lucky to get a grant from NVIDIA, and one of the things we asked, they were like, oh, we'll give you credits to use our online systems, and we wrote in our application when we were applying for the award, can we get one of their small Spark systems? So it's a little box, and it's got 128 gigs of VRAM. And we're testing that, and you can run local models that are very big on something that costs less than $5,000. Right, it's just that you use dollars because that's how the going rate of those things. So people, yeah, and this is a major piece in this area. But then on that side also, it allows us to do experimentation that is secure. Going back to the question about the security issues, about people just using these systems. It is an important thing that there must be learning of how to use these systems in a safe way, in a secure way. One part is going to be on the education side, another one is going to be on the policy side. How are we protecting our citizens? Right, and that's going to require DSTI, DCDT, DTIC, all these to come together and really work on solid policies that are integrated with each other. So I think with that, I think that was the the last one, or we are done? Thank you, and thank you again.
The minister will respond to or comment on some questions. Minister, maybe just two things. We've already used Professor Marivate in the study that NECI did. He was part of the research and innovation. So some of his ideas are contained in the set of recommendations that are in your office. But he was just confirming to me when he moved. There is another task I've given them. So I'm expecting that in June they come with a serious proposal on what we should do in the region. So it's not just him, but all the gifted people in South Africa DM. We can't just give them money and then they gallivant globally and share ideas. No, they need to come back to us with a concrete proposal. We are chairing SADC for the next 2 years, so they need to help us take something to SADC. So I'm committing you, Professor, here publicly. May I then invite the minister to make comments, and thereafter, DM, if you could express our vote of thanks. Over to you, Minister.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let me thank, before the DM officially thanks everyone, including yourself, Professor Marivate, but let me express my appreciation for your input, because we were debating and wondering, at what level would this lecture be? Will it not be above, let alone the little ones, above us? My advisor always says, yeah, these social scientists will take long to grasp some of these things. But the multidisciplinarity of what we are presenting and talking about, it's amazing. It makes everyone to at least take away something. You may not take away all of what you said, but I'm sure each one of us, and also judging by the questions and the engagement, it gives me hope. Because one of the difficulties we are faced with in our department, in public work that we do, is the difficulty of the language that we use sometimes. So we have to really be at a basic level and so on. Someone like yourself, distinguished as you are, speaking just in ordinary person's terms about AI, you are an asset. The problem of being an asset is that we want to use you more. So I wanted to say that. But I wanted to comment, Sbarwam, your point that you are making about what is needed at schools, especially the issue of coding and other such basic things. I can't agree with you more. In fact, DM, now at DG, I really get concerned about the paucity of infrastructure we need in our schools, from basic things. Maybe I stayed too much in higher education. I wasn't aware the extent to which there is no basic infrastructure in our schools, from toilets. It's such a big thing. I mean, this statistic that more than 60% of our schools, let alone coding, they don't have laboratories, they don't have libraries. If you don't have those two things, it really is a huge task. I think maybe the best way to respond to this. It's very good you are coming from deep in the rural area. Was it you saying you got exposed and you decided you're not going to go to the private sector, you're going to remain in the public sector? That's very positive. It really is very positive. I think that many of our professionals could also think that way. But if you're in the private sector, I'm trying to push for this campaign. It's not easy. Go back to your schools where you went to and see what you can contribute along the lines of these things that you have identified as important. So Ngaba here, my advisor, always scolds me and say, these youngsters, they are all from KZN. Well, not all of them. The ones who are my special guests. I don't like it. But I said to myself, for as long as I am minister, I'll take the top 2 performers in each primary school and the high school that I went to. I studied in these schools where they are. Those were my primary schools and my high schools. Of course, I'm diversifying in terms of a lot of other work that I'm doing in the rest of the provinces. But I can't leave them behind because I feel I owe them something. If everybody could also think in that way, it's not just a big thing. Of course, it will locate you because, especially under apartheid, we were very located in particular regions. One of the first ones that from Crystal Schools that I invited is now doing second-year mechanical engineering at Durban University of Technology. She was the top student in primary school and all that. So that's another challenge that we have. How do we mobilize our professionals, both in the public and the private sector, to do something about the schools that they went to in the whole country? Maybe lastly, we've got a partnership with the Department of Basic Education on providing basic science materials and access to certain things as the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation. But I budget yako teaching into 10.4 billion for science in a country like South Africa. That's nothing. So we have to do a lot. That's why also, by the way, we are urging the private sector. I'm glad that there are people from the private sector here, that perhaps you can still do more. Let me make an example with a company which is not South African, Pfizer. Can't we commit Pfizer to build 20 laboratories over a 5-year period in rural schools? The other thing we are also trying to raise, to be innovative. We are trying to push for mobile libraries and mobile laboratories, such that you can have a truck in a particular district visiting certain schools or certain areas, because we don't have the luxury of each school having a laboratory or a library. Why don't we try something like that? So we are working with basic. It's not enough. I know the president, by the way, is putting a lot of effort into this. Maybe the message of coding and other things, we also need to strengthen in that. President, almost wherever he goes outside the country, have asked me to accompany him in a number of times. He always says, this next commitment, I don't need you. As ministers, I don't want to commit you. It's my own private initiative. I am raising money for schools in South Africa. He does that. He did that in the UK. I don't know how many pounds he actually got to be able to put into schools and all that. So we need a big effort also to do joint fundraising. We can't run an education system exclusively from the basis of raising money to do things that ideally should be provided by government. But what do we do if government doesn't actually have those things? As people responsible for science, technology, and innovation, we need to be innovative on that score in order to be able to do things. Maybe the DM will have some things to add. Huh? Uban. The worst of my days is the budget vote speech, because I don't have control over myself, entirely none. Now the Deputy Minister says, well, we have said such good things, you might as well close. Oh, yeah. Well, look, firstly, as I have said, I would really like to thank each and every one of you for being part of our budget vote or pre-budget vote tabling activities, which is what we are doing here. We really appreciate this. This also keeps me going and gives me hope that I wasn't expecting so many people. I think this is quite, and also critical role players in the system to actually be with us here. We really appreciate that. We want to thank you. And as I was trying to say, let's go out and still carry out with activities that actually strengthens our national system of innovation. R&D, if you like, ST&I, if you like. I'm changing, by the way, now how we call this. You noticed it. I think we must stop calling it STI. We must call it ST and I. Because at some stage, when the ANC, as the single biggest party, was to have its annual strategy meeting or strategy retreat, so one journalist notices that one of the items in the agenda on the different days is STI. So this journalist says, really? ANC gets together to discuss STI? Because to him, STI meant something else, which all of you know what is that. So I think now the new lingo, is ST and I. It's a bit longer, but it sounds better. DM, let me thank you as well for being here when we know we should be going to polish our speeches. Because it's a huge thing to present what we have done the previous year and what we plan to do this year in 15 minutes. DM only has 10 minutes. I have 15 minutes to present that. And then in the end, I close. Now, how I close depends on the number of attacks that I've gotten from the opposition or from the other parties. And we have to respond sometimes because they can say things that are just way out of what we think. And also to reinforce those who are supporting in Parliament what they've actually said. So I would like to thank you, DM. Let me also thank the chair of our portfolio committee, Mama Kobel. Thank you very much. There are some of your portfolio committee colleagues here. Doesn't look like. I'm sure they are finalizing some of them. Their speeches for this afternoon. Let me thank my advisors. Let me thank our chairs and CEOs of all our entities for always being here, because it's important that we listen to each other. What you think and also what we think. Unfortunately, what we think is what we want to go. But it doesn't mean that we don't listen, because sometimes what we say, it's because we've gotten those things from you. I really appreciate that. Our universities, I love when I see these senior students, doctoral and postdocs. because I was abused in my previous deployment as Minister of Higher Education and Training by these younger students. I always wish I could take you for those younger undergrad students just to see you. Please go out, talk to them, encourage them that there is something beyond just being concerned about some of the immediate pressures that are facing you. Everybody has got his or her pressures. DG, thanks to you for allowing being a program director here. And as I've said, everyone, especially my special guests, okay? We must give you a big round of applause. So thank you very much. DG, we are not forced to go to the stadium tomorrow. At all. So we've got that freedom because you are not affected by now the end of the game race. It doesn't affect you at all. You support the team that you are supporting, which I won't mention because I don't like I'm humiliating you. But well done for sharing this for us, despite your stresses. Let me thank my members of my team, my office, all of you, for the work that you have done. I know that it's only 2 hours, the budget vote, but because we pile on a lot of other things, it becomes a lot of work. Yeah, for handling our special guests, who also I must particularly recognize for the work that they are doing and for honoring us by being here. We really appreciate that. Okay. On behalf of the Deputy Minister, I therefore thank all of you for your participation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let me ask, I'm told that some learners know, they've been informed, who are going to do a group photo Bushara, so with the minister. So please coordinate with Auntie Bushela Kumal. As the minister indicated, the people who would be allowed access to the parliamentary precincts is the minister, the deputy minister, the executive, the advisors, the chairs and CEOs of entities. We're really apologetic, but we will try and streamline the budget vote. Thank you for the support. Thank you very much. The exhibitions are available if you still want to explore. All the best.